They said the walls were built to keep us safe. Thick concrete, polished gates, scanners that hummed with the sound of order. On the first day, it almost felt comforting, the kind of comfort that smells sterile and hums fluorescent. They handed us badges, told us the rules, and called it protection. Most of us believed them. Or at least pretended to, because pretending felt safer than questioning. The cameras blinked like patient eyes, and the guards smiled the way people do when they already know you're not supposed to ask. Nora Kay did ask. She wasn't the loud type. No protest signs, no speeches. Just a quiet woman who once believed that structure meant safety. She'd served 2 tours before joining the Security Commission, the same institution now lecturing her about compliance. For your own good, they said, when they locked her ID after she refused the nightly scans. For community stability, they added, when they installed monitors inside private quarters. Every phrase sounded like a blanket over a bruise. The words fit too neatly to be innocent. She didn't fight it at first. She logged the hours, filed the reports, smiled during inspections. But when they began to separate families, for behavioral recalibration, something in her stopped aligning. The first separation she witnessed, a father taken for non-cooperative tone, stayed in her head like the echo of a slammed door. She started asking questions in the only safe way left, inside her reports. Paragraph 23, subsection C, she wrote, observation, protocol creates dependency rather than security. The next morning, her access level dropped from 2 to 1. That was how the system whispered back, not with threats, but with quiet deletions. By week's end, she was assigned to perimeter observation, a post nobody wanted because it meant standing 12 hours outside the very dome they'd been told was toxic. The air out there wasn't poison. It was just unfiltered, unowned. She tasted dust and freedom in the same breath and realized how long it had been since either. Inside, the announcements continued. Your safety is our dignity, the loudspeakers droned. But the words were starting to sound wrong, like someone else using your voice. Nora began recording the sounds instead, the pauses between commands, the moments where even the system seemed unsure of itself. At night, she replayed them, searching for the seams where obedience cracked. That's when she heard it, background chatter behind one of the official briefings. A male voice off mic, almost laughing. If they knew the sensors don't even activate half the time, then a muffled correction, a cut. The message was re-uploaded hours later, scrubbed clean. But she'd saved the first version. Proof that the fear keeping 10,000 people compliant was built on half-functioning tech and full-functioning control. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. She understood the new equation: truth wasn't currency, it was contraband. 2 nights later, a family disappeared from Sector D, official memo, relocated for safety. Unofficial rumor, they'd tried to leave through the old maintenance tunnel near the ridge. The tunnel Nora guarded. They called her in for questioning before sunrise. 3 officers, identical tone, identical gloves. Did you see them? Did you authorize passage? Did you interfere? She answered none, because the real question wasn't asked. Did you sympathize? That one hung in the air like static. After 9 hours, they released her, no charges, just a warning stamped on digital record, behavioral variance detected. It meant watch list. It meant the walls were closer than before. That night, Nora returned to her post. The wind outside carried sand that glittered under the perimeter lights like shards of truth no one wanted to touch. She lifted her visor, just enough to breathe unfiltered air again. It burned a little, but it was real. Inside the dome, a siren wailed, not the usual safety test, but the tone reserved for internal breaches. Her earpiece crackled, containment protocol Delta. Unauthorized data transmission from perimeter node. Her node. They'd traced her recordings. The next 40 minutes existed in 2 versions, the one the report described and the one that happened. The report said, subject failed to comply with data recall. What happened was this: she removed her badge, set it on the ground, and walked toward the fence until the field shimmered blue against her skin. Alarms surged, but she didn't stop. One step through, and the static cleared. Outside the field, the world was silent. No announcements, no commands, just the sound of her own breath. She looked back once, at the dome glowing like a captured sunrise, and whispered, protection shouldn't feel like prison. They didn't shoot her. They didn't need to. By dawn, the system rewrote her existence. Official record: Cade, Nora, transferred off-world for extended evaluation. The people inside never heard from her again. But they noticed something else: the nightly announcement stuttered for the first time in years. The voice faltered on the word dignity, repeating it twice before cutting out. And in that brief, imperfect pause, everyone realized the machine could hesitate. Weeks later, new protocols arrived. More scanners, tighter schedules, brighter lights. They called it reinforced protection. But rumors about the woman at the perimeter spread faster than the orders could suppress them. Some said she'd escaped. Others said she'd broadcast the truth before crossing the line. The system denied both, but still, they changed the loudspeaker phrase. It no longer said, "Your safety is our dignity." Now it said, "Your safety defines our dignity." A subtle edit. A confession disguised as grammar. Inside Maintenance Bay 6, technician Ray Alden found the glitch in the network logs, a looped audio file labeled Perimeter 13, Cade log. He played it once, expecting static. What he heard instead was a single sentence repeated in Nora's voice: "Protection without choice is control without consent." Then silence. He saved it on a private drive, renamed it Test Sample B. By morning, 6 more technicians had copies. No one spoke about it aloud. They didn't have to. The phrase started appearing in places it wasn't supposed to, etched on lockers, scratched into cafeteria trays, whispered during shift change. A reminder disguised as rumor. The kind of quiet rebellion that systems can't classify. Ray began altering code packets, small things, the color of the corridor lights, the sequence of gate cycles, enough to cause minor anomalies. Each time, the voice announcements lagged. Each time, a few seconds of unscripted silence bled into the routine. People started to listen for the silence, not the message. That was how revolt sounded in a world addicted to order, like breathing in between sentences. Command noticed, of course. They launched Integrity Operation. Full audit. Every tech interviewed, every log reviewed. Ray was called last. When they asked if he'd seen irregularities, he said, "Only in the places that still feel human." They didn't laugh. They transferred him to surface maintenance, the same post Nora once held. The pattern wasn't lost on anyone. Outside, the wind hadn't changed. It still carried sand and static, but now, if you listened carefully, it also carried echoes, a low repetition across the fences, faint but distinct. The system labeled it interference. The people called it a signal. By the next rotation, entire sectors began to skip. The first real crack didn't come from defiance, it came from maintenance. A vent failure in Sector G forced command to open the outer air system for the first time in 6 years. When the gates cycled, the incoming air carried faint traces of dust, and something that smelled alive. It drifted through corridors and sleeping pods like a rumor made tangible. People coughed, blinked, then realized the sky outside wasn't black like they'd been told. It was blue-gray, ordinary, survivable. For a system built on fear, that whiff of real oxygen was more dangerous than any rebellion. Technician Ray felt it too. Standing at the console, he watched the readings spike, O2 levels stable, toxins 0. The numbers didn't match the official hazard index. He printed the data and slipped it into his jacket before the automated log purge ran. By midnight, the anomaly report disappeared from the network, replaced by the usual assurance, environmental control fully contained. But he'd already handed the printout to 3 people, each of whom made a copy and burned the original. Paper had become the only safe language left. Across the dome, murmurs replaced obedience. A nurse refused to scan a patient who was already tagged. A teacher muted the morning pledge. A guard turned off his camera for 30 seconds during a corridor sweep. Small gestures, invisible if you weren't looking, enormous if you were. The system called it latency. The people called it breathing room. When command noticed productivity drops, they deployed morale officers, men and women in perfect uniforms carrying phrases polished to glass. Trust restores order, they said. Doubt endangers everyone. But their eyes twitched when lights flickered or doors lagged, even they could feel the rhythm changing. Dignity moves quietly, it doesn't need permission, only space. One evening, Ray was summoned to the director's office. The hallway leading there glowed sterile white, the kind of clean that hides infection. Director Voss waited behind his desk, a single screen displaying Nora Cade's last recorded coordinates. "You worked with her," he said. "You admire her." Ray kept his posture neutral. "I admired efficiency, sir." Voss smiled thin. "And yet efficiency collapses when workers believe myths." He tapped the screen. Nora's silhouette paused mid-stride, half inside the barrier field. "You know what destroyed civilizations before ours?" Voss asked. "Faith, in something they couldn't control. We replaced that with structure." Ray's answer was simple. Structure built on fear is still faith. It just worships the wrong god. Silence stretched. The director leaned back, measuring him. "You think she was right?" Ray met his gaze. "I think she made the air move again." Voss dismissed him with a gesture that meant both anger and curiosity. Hours later, the director ordered a full system reboot, an attempt to overwrite every unauthorized patch. But networks are like people, they remember. When the reboot executed, the voice that normally greeted the dome with its scripted calm stuttered, then spoke in 2 tones layered over each other. The first said, "Protection protocol active." The second, deeper, quieter, whispered, "Consent required." The line played only once before being silenced, but thousands heard it. For the first time, the system asked permission. By dawn, crowds gathered near the central plaza, pretending to line up for inspection. No one shouted. No banners. Just eyes lifted toward the loudspeaker that had betrayed its script. Someone started humming, a rhythm, low and steady. Others joined until the hum became a sound the system couldn't categorize. When guards arrived, they hesitated, no command covered this. In that hesitation, something irreversible happened, obedience cracked open and revealed choice. Ray stood near the edge, watching. He didn't need to lead. The idea was already airborne. The loudspeaker flickered again, struggling between silence and command. Static spilled like rain. Then, unexpectedly, a voice, female, calm, unmistakable. "Discipline means knowing when to stop obeying." It was Nora's. Her backup file, buried deep in system archives, had survived. Whether by accident or design, no one knew. The sound froze everyone. Even the guards lowered their weapons, unsure if the order to act still applied. The next seconds rewrote everything. Power feeds overloaded, lights dimmed, and the barrier field outside the dome shimmered the way heat does before a storm. Then, a single section, Sector E, the first built, powered down. The wall there didn't explode, it sighed, releasing pressure accumulated from years of containment. The protective field faded, and daylight slipped through like forgiveness. Director Voss watched from the tower, face pale in the glow. He could have ordered retaliation, but the command panel blinked access denied. Somewhere in the code, someone, or something, had changed permissions. The system now required confirmation from all registered citizens. 10,000 pending approvals filled the queue, none granted. Bureaucracy, the weapon they had used for control, had turned against them. Democracy by accident. People stepped toward the opening. Not rushing, walking, cautious, reverent. Air flowed in, carrying warmth and dust and every scent they'd forgotten. Children laughed first, the sound was too pure to punish. Guards looked at one another, then removed helmets one by one, realizing the sky wasn't an enemy. Ray felt the wind cut across his face. It tasted like truth. Someone asked what to do next. He said, "Remember how this feels," before they try to name it safety again. Behind them, the dome's lights flickered once more. The main display scrolled a new message, not authorized by command. Protection without choice is control without consent. The phrase pulsed in crimson until the power finally failed. When the glow vanished, only sunlight remained. By evening, the perimeter was open. Some stayed, afraid of the unknown. Others walked out. Nora was never found, but her name passed between them like currency. For weeks afterward, survivors debated what to call the event: rebellion, failure, awakening. In the end, they settled on nothing. Naming it would have given someone ownership, and this moment belonged to everyone who'd ever whispered no. Months later, scattered communities rebuilt without walls. They argued, disagreed, built slower, but no one installed cameras in bedrooms again. The phrase, "for your own good," became a warning, not a comfort. And sometimes, at night, when wind passed through the open structures they called shelters, it carried the faint echo of a woman's voice counting cadence, not orders, just breath. In, control. Out, dignity. Ray kept a fragment of the old system drive, powered by a solar cell. On it, the audio log still looped endlessly. He never turned it off, because silence, he'd learned, is a luxury that must be earned. One morning, a child found the device and asked what it was. Ray smiled. A memory of when we learned the difference between protection and possession. The child pressed play. Nora's voice spoke once, clear and steady: "We built walls for safety and learned they echo louder than any threat." The child listened, then asked, "Will we build them again?" Ray shook his head. "Not while we remember."